Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. I am bringing you amazing stories from amazing women in leadership from across the globe. Let's get started. I'm here today with Clara Capano, and she comes to us from Scottsdale, Arizona. Clara is the founder and self-titled Chief Harmony Officer of Capano Speaking and Training. She leads professional women into developing their own personal path to peace and finding success on her terms. Clara is an international speaker and trainer, best-selling author, and her most recent book is titled The Mother of All Success Manuals, and we're going to talk about that in a second. She is also the host of Women Winning Their Way and Be Productive. Her passion is in helping women in business work with more intention so they can put themselves back in the driver's seat of their life and create harmony between their personal and professional lives. Clara, I talk about this a lot in the work that I do. You and I connected on this really heavily. And so I actually wanted to start with your latest book, The Mother of All Success Manuals, because the title itself just draws us in. So first and foremost, welcome to the show and let's talk.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I am so excited to be here. It was a pleasure having you on one of my shows. It's always fun to be able to return the favor. But yeah, let's talk away.
Well, I wanted to start with your book because, first of all, it's hard to get from idea to published book that sits behind you in your office. But also, the title itself makes me just want to open it up and be like, what is the secret?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this is my third book, and it's really been my baby because when I was starting out my quest as a working mom, I thought everything was going well until it wasn't. And, I just started to notice that so many women, especially, we push ourselves and push ourselves. And there is a beauty in that, but there's also a dark side to that. And what I wanted to do is just to take my story and my journey of how I went into complete and utter burnout and breakdown, and how I was able to, with some very simple strategies, be able to get to the other side of it and be in a position now where I really love my life. I love the person that I look at in the mirror. I'm proud of the things that I've done, even though I'm still not perfect. And more importantly, I'm proud of the work that I put out each and every day. And that's what I want women to do. I feel that we just beat ourselves up, and also we feel so alone. And we need to come together more as a community and support each other in all the things that we're doing.
So many of the stories on this podcast are these Phoenix rising stories, right? Where we've gone through our lowest of lows and highest of highs and lowest of lows again. And we want to share what we've learned. Can you tell me where that comes from in you?
Yeah. So I born as an overachiever. Both of my parents tend to be overachievers, but it was more self-inflicted on myself. I'm the youngest of four children. And for whatever reason, all the other siblings sort of knew what they wanted to do, and I didn't. And I always felt something was wrong with me. And so for me, I chose academics. Academics was going to be my thing. And so for me, success equated to how many A's could I get? How many awards could I get? All those things. So it became all about checking off the boxes because that was going to be who I was. Well, that was great. And it drove me, and I have achieved some amazing things that I'm very proud of. But I got to the point where I was in my 30s and I had the great job with the title. I had the money in the bank. I had the house on the golf course. I had the BMW, and I felt completely empty. And I felt more alone and more lost than I ever had in my entire life. And it really was at that moment that it was my son who sort of shed light on it, because he came to me one night and was able to voice out that I really wasn't paying attention to him and I really wasn't being there for him. And it was in that moment that I had to start getting honest with myself, and I had to find a new way. I had to find a new way of defining success. I had to find a new way of showing up because what I was doing was not working.
I was thinking about this morning, actually. I was thinking about reaching out to people that are close to me. And I made a commitment to reach out to like 5 people every day that are close to me and just try to make a connection. And I
Mhm.
was sitting there this morning and I had this moment of realizing that the people that are closest to me have barriers up. And it's because I have barriers up. And it was a
Interesting.
really big moment of aha. Like, I think if somebody were to describe me, they wouldn't describe me as a closed off, barrier driven person. But I was realizing that
Mhm.
there is a barrier in
Mhm.
trying to hold it together, be perfect, get it all done, and having closeness with people I really care about and actually
Right.
being vulnerable in that space.
Oh, yeah, and I couldn't because in my mind, being vulnerable equated to weak. If I let people know, because after my son was born, I did have postpartum, but I couldn't acknowledge it because if I acknowledged it and made it real, something was wrong with me. People wouldn't feel comfortable. They couldn't trust me. They couldn't count on me. So I shoved it all down, which is what so many of us do. And what I started to notice is the feedback I was getting is that I was very cold. I was so task oriented. Everything was transactional. And that was so not who I wanted to be. That was like the antithesis of who I wanted to be. And I had to start to again reconstruct who I was. And I had to really let go and start to understand because as I started to show my vulnerability, I realized so many other women were drowning just like I was. And it wasn't beautiful in the sense that I was happy that other people were drowning, but it was beautiful in the sense that I was able to build again this community.
Right.
And I really have made an effort. And a friend of mine the other day actually made the comment. She's like, "You're so good at staying connected." And I said, "That's because it's a priority." And so I think that's what I had to learn is how to rewire myself so that I was making the right things a priority and checking off the boxes was no longer a priority.
Yeah.
I
Same.
still accomplish stuff. I'm driven. I love it. And I'm going to be unapologetic about being driven, but I don't let it come at the cost of myself anymore. I don't let it come at the cost of my relationships with those that are most important to me. And I think that's one of the messages is to start to understand that even though I work primarily with women, it's all people. You can have success without having to sacrifice who you are in your life along the way. There is a way to bring that harmony in together.
Absolutely. And it brings me to the question I was going to ask, which is why women? And I have some ideas. I think in our generation, and I mean, maybe it's getting better as the younger women are coming up, those Swifties in the world, but our
Mm.
generation really were conditioned to question and tear down other women, to not trust them.
And I think because in the 80s, when women really started, I mean, in that 70s and 80s is when women really started, there were so few seats at the table. So we had to claw our way and we had to be somewhat ruthless because it was a man's world. And if there was only going to be one seat at the table, it had to be us. So I think, we became very masculine, in our approaches to things because that was the norm. That's all anybody knew. And I think that it has softened a bit. And I do see in many areas it's starting to open up. But I still think we have a long way to go because I still think women are afraid, even just on little things. Like, even if I'm to show up and talk about all of my successes in business, I always feel I have to preface it by, but I still love being a mom. I still love my son. And why do I have to do that? We always feel like we have to qualify what we're doing, and we shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, we justify a lot too, and I think that's a big unconditioning and relearning that we have to do.
Mhm.
You're making me think about how the studies are supporting that there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, there was some research that just came out from 4 women researchers that basically said, biases in the workplace in today's environment inhibits and hinders progression of women in their careers. And it's huge. I mean, the gap is still big.
Yeah.
And so I guess it brings me back to full circle on the question, which is, you're right. We serve all people with the work that we do, but why women specifically in the work that you're most passionate about?
I just think again, it's a conditioning. And the example that I'll use is, my son is now 18, so he is off at college and everyone knows that. But when I'm on the road, 30, 35 weeks out of the year. And the one question I get asked every time, and I get asked a lot, not just once, a lot. Who is taking care of your son when you are on the road? Now I've went and I've talked with my male counterparts. They never get asked. And at the end of the day, as great as the father figure might be, it always comes down to mom first. The schools will always call mom first. Why does it have to be that way? I also think on some level, as women, it's a badge of honor to us. We have a little bit of martyrdom inside of us where we love to be able to say, oh no, I can get it all done. Where so many people, the men included, come and say, can I help you with that? Oh no, I've got it. And I see so many women who are crumbling, and I reach out to help them and they don't want it. So I think on some level, there is something in there where we are creating this on our own,
Yeah.
and we are not letting ourselves go forward. I'm not exactly sure why. I think there is some fear because we're still trying to find our place, and we want to be worthy. We want to be worthy of being in the boardroom, and we still want to be worthy of being at home. And I think for so many, on so many levels, it's still part of our identity. Again, we're the ones that give birth, so we are that. And I think that, again, there is just still a lot of internal, conflict of who are we, what's our identity, and a lot of shame on how can we do it all, and can we do it all well. We have a lot of imposter syndrome out there and a lot of comparisonitis going on.
You mentioned that you're on the road a lot and you are a go-getter and you have a lot of projects going on and a lot of opportunities on the horizon. What is a big challenge that you're facing and kind of juggling all that right now?
It's always the follow-up and the admin. I am a big proponent that, we need to be more relational and not transactional. And it's hard, you have to really be on your time. And so being able to prioritize and really understand, again, what's the highest and best use of your time. I think so many of us get caught up in how we spend our time when we need to think of it more of an investment. So I really have to be regimented to get the right things done. I have to learn letting go and understanding that I can delegate things out. And even though they may not be done the way that I would want them to be done, they're still going to get done. And, again, working around. So one of the things I also really teach people how to do is when they put their schedule together is the first thing that goes in your schedule needs to be your life. Because I think the number one reason we get burned out and we don't have a life is because we don't make our life a priority.
Some people too will say, well, I don't have time. Like, well, if you're not putting that in first, and they'll say, well, if I do, then I won't get this and this done. But
it has to be a priority. What are you making a priority? Because if I sit down on the couch and watch TV, that's what I'm making a priority. If I want my health to be a priority, I have to block it in there. If I want my family to be a priority, it has to be in there. And, one of the quotes, Stephen Covey, if you want to know a person's true priorities, look at their bank account and their schedule, and it's the truth. And you have to start doing these things and also understanding you're never going to get it all done. And I think sometimes we overwhelm ourselves so much in trying to get it all done, that we lose sight of the great things that we are doing. And we get ourselves, because too many choices cause paralysis of the brain. And so I think sometimes the beauty is actually in doing less, but doing it at a higher level.
I love that. Yes.
When I am working, I am working. So many people, they say, oh, I work a 50-hour-a-week work week. But if I really follow them around, they're probably only working about 27 to 32 hours. So the idea is, again, work when you're supposed to work, and when you're off the clock, be off the clock, because we can get a lot done. It's that same analogy of if you go on vacation, you are so productive the day before you go on vacation because you have a deadline. Well, carry that concept of a deadline into your day. When you give yourself deadlines, time will expand for the time that you give it.
Well, and it's the distractions, right? I could say, well, I'm working on my PhD research, but maybe I just spent 30 minutes on TikTok avoiding that.
Exactly.
True story.
True story. Yeah. I've been there. I've been there too. And again, you have to really get clear. And again, there has to be time for rest, but you have to start looking at that. And when you're avoiding, are you avoiding because you really are burned out and you need to step away? Or are you avoiding it because it's uncomfortable, you're overwhelmed, and we have to start just getting very honest with ourselves.
Absolutely. I love to ask on this show about an adventure that you've had because, as we know, when you take yourself out of your comfort zone and you put yourself in new experiences that engage your full sense of self, transformational learning and experience happens and you come out a different person. Can you share with us an adventure that you've had in this last year that might fit that bill?
Well, I think starting my TV shows. The first one I started was at the tail end of 2020. So it's been a little over a year, but then I launched two new shows this year. And it's exhilarating and I learned so much because it's all the production, the editing and doing all of those, the skill sets of active listening and finding guests and putting it all together. And I love it. It is where I come alive. It is my favorite thing to do. And I always kind of knew it, but I didn't know how to do it. And so just being able to really again ask for help, surround myself and just take it. But it has been an amazing adventure that has allowed me to go global and work with people and impact lives. And yeah, now we're talking with some people about possibly syndicating some of the shows.
It's so exciting. I mean, one of the things that I loved about getting to know you was that you and I both can go into these like subject line tangents, and there's so many spaces and places that we could talk, but your engagement and your passion in your space makes me all
Mhm.
excited to talk to you in that
Oh, I'm
space.
glad.
So I love that
Yeah.
this has been an adventure for you that you're finding fulfilling because it's super fun to see it take place.
Yeah, thank you. But life has to be full of adventures. Again, our comfort zone is meant to keep us comfortable, but it's not meant to allow us to live. And we got to get outside that comfort zone.
Well, I want to remind the listeners that we always put more information in the description of the podcast with links so you can find Clara, make sure you get what you want out of all the resources that she provides. Clara, is there something that you wish I would have asked you that we just didn't get to today?
No, you ask amazing questions. So I appreciate that. But I think again, the one message I would just love people to hear is you're doing fine. Own your own voice, know what is best for you. And again, build your pattern to success around what you need.
I'm going to leave it on that, but I did want to mention that I love that sarcasm is my superpower behind you.
It is. Yes, that is me in a nutshell.
I love it. Well, I look forward to seeing your show syndicated and making sure that I get your books on my bookshelf as well. I'm super glad that you've been on this show, and it's always a pleasure. I can't wait for the next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. You can find more podcast recordings and episodes at www.roamyoursoul.com. That's ROAM, roaming the world, finding amazing stories from amazing women, sharing their leadership skills and talents with us all over the globe.